warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Bless. Continue with the class essence. Right, inshallah, will increase our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, become better Muslims. Right, let's start out with the intentions for seeking knowledge and teaching. I intend to seek knowledge and to teach, to benefit myself and to benefit others, to remind myself and to remind others, to profit myself and to profit others, to urge adherence to the book of Allah and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to invite to guidance and to guide to that which is good, seeking the face of Allah, His pleasure, His closeness, and His reward subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's continue on with our Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم ارزقنا يا ربي فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين في عافيتي يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين وفقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل واهدنا إلى سواء السبيل اللهم انفعنا وارفعنا وعرفنا بالعلم النافع وانفعنا به أنفسنا وأهلنا وأوطاننا وديارنا وجميع المسلمين يا إله العالمين الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله. Continue with our legacy. We are still, alhamdulillah, with the book Saviors of Islamic Spirit, Khawaja Nizamuddin Awliya. Inshallah, we continue with him. Yeah, we saw his various activities and the things that he did and advice and also the trials and tribulations that he went through. The last lesson, disregard of the royalty. From the very beginning, the guiding principle of the Chishtiya order in India has been to reform and regenerate the Indian Muslim society in accordance with the teachings of Islam, but at the same time to remain unsolicitous of the royal favors. So that is their aim. Right, their principle is the main aim, objective of this order is to help to reform and regenerate the Indian Muslim society. That means to help them to become better Muslims, to improve on their situation and things like that. According to the teaching of Islam, and they do not like favors of the royal. They do not try to gain favors from the royalty. As earnest seekers of truth, the earlier Chishti mystics had held fast to this golden rule as a sacred patrimony of their precursors and spiritual guides. So they hold on to it very, very closely. They do not want to get involved with most importantly, is not to get involved with the royalty, right? And focus on improving and helping people to become better Muslims. From Khawaja Moinuddin to Khawaja Nizamuddin, every mystic saint remained completely indifferent to the royalty, which helped them to keep their mission clearly aloof from the political upheavals of the times. So politics is something it's not something that is easy to manage, and once we get embroiled with politics, we will be distracted from our main purpose of doing things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of them, we have gone through from Moinuddin to Nizamuddin, who was the Nizamuddin we are doing right now, whose teacher was Fariduddin. Numerous dynasties held the reins of government and tumbled down, but the sincerity and indifference to wealth and dignity on the part of these Sufi saints allowed them to propagate their mission relentlessly over hundreds of years. And this was perhaps the reason for the wide popularity it gained among the masses. So yeah, as you can see, if you have learned the history of India under the various Muslim empires, they change, right? This one toppled, this one happened, this one overthrow this one, and this one died, this king and things like that. But because they are not involved with all these things, and they are not interested in wealth, and they are clear of what they want to do, right? They have been able to propagate their mission years and years, hundreds of years. And that is why they are very popular with the masses. Since the day Khawaja Nizamuddin was nominated for the spiritual conquest of the country, 7 kings adorned the throne of Delhi Sultanate. So with him alone, 7 kings. He under him, he was, of course, when you talk about him being the spiritual conquest of the country, that means his job was to help reform the Muslims of the country. And he was sent to Delhi, and we saw him moving, right, and from Delhi to Ritapur, right, and for the various reasons that was cited in the last lesson. The 7 kings, that means that the kings don't really last long, die or killed or whatever it is now. Some of them were extremely haughty, others ruled with pomp and splendor. Not sure what's the difference between haughty and pomp and splendor. Haughty is, some of them can be rich and having all kinds of things, but they might not be haughty, but some of them can be rather haughty. So, but the Khawaja never graced the royal court by his presence, except once when he was called upon to take part in a disputation about the lawfulness of musical recitations. Nor he allowed any king to pay a visit to him. So that's his position. He doesn't visit them, nor does he allow any of the kings to visit him. We saw this also last lesson, right, where he will not allow a king to visit him. He doesn't like to be part of the royalty, to be seen as being close to the royalty. The Khawaja has still not achieved the eminence by the time of Ghiathuddin Balban. So the latter did not take much notice of him. So this is one of the kings now. Muizzuddin Kaikab was too preoccupied with hunting and amusement to pay any attention to him. It's all the kings. And some kings don't bother with him because he's not a threat. And another king just loves hunting and not interested to be interested with him. Jalaluddin Khilji was, however, the first king who was himself an accomplished scholar and connoisseur who patronized men of letters and talent. So there was a different king here, Jalaluddin, who actually he himself learned Islam, and he liked to be with those of knowledge. Khawaja had also then reached the pinnacle of his fame. So by this time, Khawaja was very famous and known throughout India. Jalaluddin Khilji expressed his wish several times to be allowed to pay homage to Khawaja, but the latter always turned down his requests. So as we are aware, they do not like to be part of the royalty. And last, he planned with Amir Khosrow to secretly visit the Khawaja without informing him. So the king was determined to visit Khawaja. Who doesn't want to be visited by the king? Amir Khosrow, however, thought it imprudent to give his sheikh in the dark, and he broke the news to him. So as Amir Khosrow was not really keen on doing things secretly, not informing the sheikh of what's going to happen, and so he informed the sheikh. The Khawaja immediately made up his mind to visit the shrine of his own sheikh at Ajudan. When the king came to know of it, he chided Amir Khosrow for leaking out his secret, but Amir Khosrow replied, "Displeasure of the king posed a danger to my life, but that of the sheikh would have opened my faith to peril." So that is where he understands things, right? So the king was not happy with him for informing Khawaja, but he told the king, "Well, you can be unhappy with me, but you might kill me, but that's not as important to me as to to put my faith in danger. If I do that to my sheikh, my faith will be in danger." The wise and generous king that Jalaluddin Khilji was kept quiet at this answer. All right, quiet. he knew he's a man of knowledge, so he understood what the his Amir was saying, and so he kept quiet. Khawaja put to test. Sultan Alauddin Khilji ascended the throne after his uncle Jalaluddin Khilji. Lordly and arrogant by nature, he's the second Alexander of India, was neither devoted to the Khawaja in the beginning nor bore any ill will against him, so it's rather indifferent. But certain persons envious of the Khawaja tried to embitter the king against him. So it's always the case. There's always envious people around who find ways and means to make the king, right, think badly of this person, Khawaja. They told the king that the growing popularity of the Khawaja was fraught with danger to the kingdom. But this is always the main topic, right, that frightens kings, is that they will be threatened by the popularity of someone, and that worries the king a lot, right? In order to test the sincerity of the Khawaja, he wrote a letter requesting for prayer and his advice for conducting the administration, and deputed his son and heir apparent Khizr Khan to bear the letter to Khawaja. Right? So he decided. So he didn't really take the word of all these people who were envious, right, who were instigating against the Khawaja. So he wrote a letter and he sent his son to carry the letter. And the letter was delivered to him. He took it in his hand but did not read it. Instead, addressing those who were then present, he said, "I pray for the king." Thereafter, he added, what have we, the mendicants, to do with the king? Right. So we are aware here that he is blessed with knowledge of the unseen. That means what's written, he didn't read, but he knew what was in the letter. Right. And he says that he prays for the king, but he has nothing to do with the king. Like a recluse, I have withdrawn to this corner to pray for the welfare of the king and the Muslims. He feels as if he considers himself as one who is out of the society, right? And he has decided to be far away from society. And his only job is to pray for the welfare of the king and the Muslims. If the king should disapprove of it, I shall go away from here. So he told the king's son, that if you're not happy with me being like that near you, then I'll go away. Allah's earth is wide enough. Pleased with the reply given by the Khawaja, the king observed, I already knew that the Khawaja is least concerned with the affairs of the kingdom, but malicious people wanted me to pick up a quarrel with him so that this country should go to it. So he's wise enough, right, to understand that although he's not very inclined to the Khawaja, not as religious as his uncle, but he is aware that there are malicious people waiting to destroy him and the country. The king apologized for the letter sent by him and expressed his devotion to the Khawaja. He also requested Khawaja Nizamuddin to allow him to pay a visit to him, but he replied, the king need not come. I shall pray for him in his absence, which is more efficacious. So that is because people usually go to see him and ask him for prayers, to pray for them. So the king wanted to go there, but he says, no need. You want me to pray for you, I'll pray for you. If you're not around, it's better for you. It's more effective that I dua for you within your absence. Sultan Alauddin Khilji repeatedly made requests to see the Khawaja. When the king became more insistent, the Khawaja replied, I have two doors in my house. If the king enters from the one, I shall go out from the other. That means he's not going to ever meet the king. Sultan Alauddin Khilji, however, still continued to have the highest regard for the Khawaja, whom he requested to pray for him whenever he had any worry or anxiety. So here the king was not really persistent. He wasn't angry that the Khawaja does not want to see him and even make such statements of the king enter from one, I'll go out the other, but he continued to have respect for the Khawaja and realized that the need to have the Khawaja to make du'as for him. Khawaja Nizamuddin always solemnly beseech Allah on behalf of the king on such occasions. And they are not attached to the royalty. They don't want to be part of the royalty. They don't want to be seen as patronizing the royalty, but they make du'as on behalf of the royalty. A historian of the time, Qazi Ziauddin Barni writes, when Malik Naib had laid the siege of Warangal, the communications to Telangana broke down. and the Sultan could not get any news about his forces for more than 40 days. All right, so here is an instant of a story, of a historical situation in which they send the Crown Prince, the Malik Naib, to lay siege on Warangal. It's one of the towns here. It's one of the expeditions. But somehow the communications broke and the Sultan did not hear from his forces for more than 40 days. Sultan felt worried about the safety of his troops, while certain courtiers apprehended the possibility of some disaster or defeat as the cause of the disruption of communications from the front. All right, here, the Sultan here is very worried about the people, his troops, but then people around him, some of them give suggestions, which are not really very favorable suggestions, which rather negative suggestions, which says that, oh, maybe they have been caught and, some disaster befell them, or they are defeated, and so the communications are broken, are cut off. One day, in a moment of despairing anxiety, the Sultan deputed Malik Karabek and Qazi Mughithuddin of Bayakna to convey his mental disquiet to the Khawaja. So he sent two people to tell the Khawaja of his anxiety, of his worry, right? And asked the Khawaja to dua. The king asked them to tell the Khawaja that since he was even more solicitous than him about the welfare of Islam and its adherents, he might let him know about the welfare of the army if his illuminated self have any prognostication about it. So that was a message that Khawaja, the king sent to Khawaja. He does acknowledge that the Khawaja has a great concern for all the Muslims and work hard to ensure that they are proper in their Islam, and also to ensure that they are not, to help out the poor and things like that. And he's quite sure that the Khawaja would be concerned for the army too. And if there's any idea of what's happened to the enemy, he would like to know about it. He also instructed his messengers to exactly report the reply given by the Khawaja. And the two courtiers conveyed the message to the Khawaja. He started relating the victories achieved earlier by the king, and then added, but these are nothing as compared to those we expect in future. So he mentioned the various victories of the king. That means he has a lot of knowledge. He knows what's happening. And then he says, although they are victorious and achieve many successes, but what they are going to get is better. The king was much pleased to learn the reply given by the Khawaja, for he was assured that Warangal would have been captured by the time. Same day after Asar prayers, the emissary sent by Malik Naib arrived with his letter describing the success of his expedition. So we can see that these people, the Khawaja, being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they make du'as, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept their du'as. And we have seen that also in our analysis of the hadith, last week's hadith, that when these people, they're very close to Allah, they do lots of amal saleh, they do lots of prayers, reading the Quran, zikr and everything. And Allah has promised that Allah will accept their du'as and give them insights. They have insights also, as we have seen in the case of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. Of course, we do not compare Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu with awliya, but we are looking at what gifts Allah can give people close to him. He knew, he saw, in fact, Allah give him an image of the situation at the war front, just miles away from far, very, very far away in another country, right? And he actually could instruct the general on what to do to protect the army, and the general, in fact, heard him, right, those miles away. So this is the greatness, powers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he has vested it on certain people who deserve, right, this kind of special abilities. Yes, and Umar had a number of special qualities of writing letters to the river, and the river was river Nile stopped, didn't overflow and destroy the plains around it. I've heard also of a story of a wali Allah in Indonesia, in Jember. Jember is somewhere in Surabaya. right? It seems that there was an epidemic and everyone becoming sick and dying. So one day, one man decided to go to this Khawaja and to ask him to give water, and so this to help him cure the disease, which is a very terrible disease. So this Khawaja, this Khawaja, sorry, this ulama, this sheikh read dua in the water and gave him, and he was cured. So everybody was excited. Everybody came around him, like 3 loads of bus loads came to ask for water from him. Of course, it's not going to be easy for him, right, to do that. So what he did was that he asked them whether there's any lake around here. And they said there's a lake nearby. So he wrote a piece of paper and he threw it into the lake. And he said, "You all going to take water from there." And all of them took water from there and they were cured. So these are Allah's gifts on different people, on people who are close to him. That is why when there are ulama around, people like to visit ulama and ask them to make du'as for them. Some people are against this and they say like, "Oh, can't we make our own du'a?" We know our du'as sometimes are not accepted because we are not doing things right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran that we should call upon him, but then he says there's a clause there that we ourselves must also respond to him, right? And then he will accept our du'as. So yeah, that's the reality of things. The letter was read out by the pulpiters after Friday prayers. The victory was announced by the beat of drums, and the people in their happiness raised the strains of inward joy. So everybody was happy for the success of the expedition. This incident also increased the king's devotion and regard for the Khawaj. On another occasion, when the Mongols attacked India, right? So we have, this one is the Delhi Sultanate. Then we have the Mongols. Eventually, those who are who learned the history of India, the Mongols became Muslim. And at this time, I'm not sure that they were already Muslims or not, but they conquered, they ruled India, right? The Mughal Empire. The Sultan himself marched out, placing himself at the head of his troop to drive back the invaders. So the Sultan is a very, very brave one. Nowadays, we don't have kings doing that. We don't have presidents and prime ministers doing that, leaders of countries doing that. In fact, nowadays warfare is very cowardly in some sense, where they just shoot missiles from miles or kilometers away, right, and just bomb anybody and everybody, and it's really a terrible form of attack. And in Islam, Rasulullah in any of his expedition is always reminded his followers never ever kill ladies, never kill children, never destroy plants, right? So these are strict orders from Rasulullah to show that they are fighting only those who fight them, right? So that is why it's a 1-to-1 fight or 2. Right? They do use arrows to shoot, and things like that, but it's a warfare between those who are involved. So these are really brave and courageous people. He sent a message requesting the Khawaja to invoke divine succor at that critical moment. So somehow he is able to send messengers to ask the Khawaja to dua. The Khawaja instructed all the inmates of his monastery to pray, and himself earnestly entreated Allah for the victory of the Sultan. After a few days, the news was received that the Sultan's valor had brought decisive victory to his arms and to his army, and the invaders had fled to a rapid and disorderly retreat. So that was what happened, right? The dua, Alhamdulillah, Allah bless him with acceptance of his dua, and the Sultan gained victory. One of the Sultan's courtiers, Qazi Ziauddin, relates that Alauddin never spoke disparagingly of the Khawaj. Although there were several persons who described the Khawaja's bountiful generosity and popularity in a manner calculated to rouse jealousy in the king's heart, but he never gave ears to them. So he is aware of all these envious people around who are finding ways and means, right, to bring the Khawaja down. And use even his goodness of generosity, being generous, but somehow, he's very generous, he gives a lot, people like him more than he like you, he love him more than he love you. And sometimes some kings, people of high position would like to be more revered and more liked, and so they might want to, they get envious, right? So the king is not like that. He understands, he knows where these people are and who these people are and why they are doing all these things. So he doesn't listen to them. The Sultan's regard for the Khawaja gradually developed into a respectful submission, but he could never meet the Khawaja. Now that's a sad thing. I suppose it must be very sad for the king that he couldn't meet this man of great repute and great generosity and special ability, special gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qutbuddin's animosity. After Alauddin had breathed his last, his second son, Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah, ascended the throne, depriving the rightful claimant and heir apparent, Khizr Khan. So Khizr Khan was his first son, so the second son actually took over and disallowed Khizr Khan. This is always politics among siblings, where they might have some kind of, they create a group of people to overthrow the first king. Since Khizr Khan had been devoted to the Khawaja, Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah nursed a feeling of resentment against the Khawaja too. So he's not happy with Khizr Khan. I mean, because Khizr Khan doesn't like Khizr Khan, his brother, right? So he doesn't like Khawaja, which developed into hostility with the passage of time. Qutbuddin built a new Jami' mosque, which he named Masjid Miri, and ordered all the theologians and divines of Delhi to perform the Friday prayers therein. Khawaja Nizamuddin, however, refused to comply with the royal command, replying that he had a mosque near his house which had a greater claim upon him. That means he should go to the mosque near to his house and be an imam there, because that mosque is under his responsibility. He's not going to go such a far mosque, right, to the mosque that is built by Qutbuddin. This further enraged the king. The relations between the two was so strained that when the Khawaja once saluted the king, on coming across him in the shrine of Shaykh Ziauddin Rumi, the latter refrained even from exchanging the greetings. So that is how bad it was, right? The king didn't want to acknowledge the salams of the Khawaja. Another incident, however, provided the king with an opportunity to declare his foolish intentions, which he might have concealed for long in his bosom. So then the story came. According to the custom followed in those days, all the grandees, officers, and respectable citizens were required on the first day of every lunar month to present themselves before the monarch for salutation and presentation of gifts to him. This is very difficult. It was very difficult for some people. Every first of the Islamic calendar, they must go and see him and give presents to him. The Khawaja, however, never went on these occasions, but used to send his servant Iqbal as his deputy. Well, it's not that he didn't send all, but he did send someone, but he didn't go. Feeling slighted by the proxy, of course, he feels he's very upset and is angry. In fact, the king ordered that none again amongst his chiefs and officers should henceforth visit Rayathpur to pay respect to the Khawaja. So because Khawaja didn't come to pay respect to him, he doesn't allow any of his officials to pay respect to the Khawaja. Amir Khusro relates that the king even said, whoever would bring the head of the Khaysheh, he shall be rewarded 1,000 tanka. So that must be the money at that time. A lot of money, right? We note that. And Amir Khusro is still around, right? Now serving the new king, Qutbuddin. King publicly announced his intention. If he does not turn up next time, I would know how he comes. So the king has already threatened, right, to kill Khawaja if he doesn't come to pay respect. The king's intention perhaps was to have Khawaja Nizamuddin brought to the court as a prisoner, or he might have even decided to get rid of him once and for all. So he's really very unhappy with the Khawaja. The Khawaja was told of the king's resolve. But indifferent to the peril threatening him, the Khawaja remained quiet. So he's not interested. He's not afraid. And these are people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know Allah will protect them. Right? Even if they are killed, okay, fine. That's the way it should be. I mean, that's how they think. All right. One after one, the days were running out. The month began to draw to a close, says Manazir Ahsan Jilani. And with it, every well-wisher of the Khawaja began to worry himself sick. So everybody is so worried because this is the next month. The first of the month is coming, right? And the king is expecting Khawaja to present himself and to meet him and give him a present personally. And Khawaja doesn't seem to be worried, but the others are also worried what's going to happen, right? He is a very cruel king who insists on what he wants. At last, the new moon was also sighted. You could even see the new moon. Now, everyone entitled to admittance before the king shall present himself before the monarch on the coming day. But the Khawaja is still adamant and has decided not to visit the king, who on his part is also firm on his declared resolve. I would know how he comes. So there's a very, 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 very serious condition here. The Khawaja doesn't want to see the king. The king is determined to take him, to bring him to see him, no matter what it means, no matter how it is done. Only the night is to pass for the day, dreaded by the citizens of Delhi, when the two sultans, one of the temporal world and the other of the spiritual realm, shall clash their arms. So what's going to happen, right, on this very day when the Khawaja, considered as a sultan of the spiritual realm, right, is going to fight or come to react against the king. The fateful night has still not folded up when the king's doom was sealed. Khosrow Khan seized the king by the hair. So that's his brother. The two grappled each other, but Khosrow Khan succeeded in thrusting a dagger in the abdomen of the king, who came down crashing to the ground. So there was aim at killing, and Khosrow Khan killed his brother. Khosrow Khan severed his head from the body and flung it down to the courtyard of the imperial palace of 1,000 pillars. The palace was amazing pillars with 1,000 pillars, a beautiful palace, and he threw his brother's head down. This is a sad situation, but anger overcomes people's judgment of things and causes them to do things which they never ever thought they would do. In this case, Khosrow Khan killed his brother and cut off the head. Of course, Rasulullah is very, very, very strict about cutting off heads of people, because that was the trend, it seems, right? Or the customs of fight during the with the people of before Islam, right? But we saw in our various stories that we had, that they continue with this culture of mutilating bodies, which was very much against the teachings of Rasulullah. So he instructs very clearly, no one is to mutilate anybody. But it's something part of their culture. And it was difficult for them not to do that, because it might have shown the power that they have. And these people are in fights, they want to really show that they're able to do all these things. The mysterious repast. So during the period when that settles in some sense, right? The worry of all the people that the Khawaja is to be pulled or forced to meet the king, because the king died on the night, killed by his own brother. The mysterious repast. During the period when Sultan Qutbuddin had forbidden his courtiers to pay a visit to the Khawaja, spies had also been deputed by him to bring intelligence on how the Khawaja managed his imperial kitchen after the cessation of all gifts and presents by the royal entourage. So we saw, right, in the previous lesson, that Khawaja has a kitchen where he churn out lots of food for people, cooking food and distributing food to the poor, and lots of people come to visit him, and everybody has got special food, although he didn't eat the special food. He only ate some fruits or vegetables. He's not interested in all this food, right? And of course the king saw it as him being able to do that, because he was given presents by the royal entourage, that means the nobles and the elites of the society did go over to visit him and bring lots of things. And we saw that also in the previous lesson. So now he wants to teach the Khawaja a lesson, right? So he stopped all of his nobles and from going over, right, to present presents and gifts. So let's see what's going to happen to the Khawaja. Sheikh Nasiruddin Chitak Delhi relates that when the Sheikh was apprised of the king's order, he directed his attendants to increase the quantity of victuals cooked in his kitchen. So although when he was aware of the order of the king, that none of the royalty or any of the nobles from the royal should go over and give him anything. So he actually, instead of stinting on the cooking, he asked more to be cooked in his kitchen. After a few days, the king inquired about the matter and was told that the quantity of foodstuff had since been doubled by the Khawaja. So the king realized that his attempt to squeeze the Khawaja did not work, right? Instead, more food has been churned out from the kitchen, doubled in fact. Surprised to hear the reply, he remarked, I was mistaken. He seems to get sustenance from unknown sources. So he somehow acknowledged the fact that the Khawaja is blessed with risky, right, from sources he is not aware of, because he thought the risky that provisions of the Khawaja is from his royal entourage. All right, so that's a glimpse and another part of the story of the Khawaja. These are people, as mentioned, right? Great people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not only do they are they committed to their ibadah, their zikrs, their prayers, their heart, their whatever, they are also committed to helping and improving the state of the poor, not only in this world, but also in the next world. All right, we continue with our Al-Wafi. Right. طريق الجنة, path to Jannah. عن أبي عبد الله جابرين عبد الله الأنصاري رضي الله عنه أن رجل سأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال أرأيت إذا صليت الصلوات المكتوبات وصمت رمضان وأحللت الحلال وحرمت الحرام ولم أزد على ذلك شيئا أدخل الجنة قال نعم رواه المسلم. So we have that, right? There's a man, it's related by Abdullah Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, that a man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, can you please show me, show me, right? If I, or tell me and explain to me, if I just pray the wajib salats and fast Ramadan and make what is halal halal and what is haram haram, and I don't do more than that, will I enter Jannah? And he says yes. Wa ma'na haram to haram, the meaning of haram is haram means ajtanabhu, ijtanabtuhu, I will avoid it. Wa ma'na ahlaltu halal, what is halal is made halal, fa'altuhu mu'taqidan hilla, then he will do it as much as he's able to. All right, there are degrees of worship. All right, we have gone through quite a number explanations of this hadith, right? And we talk about the fact that this hadith talks about just doing the main things, right? The main ibadah is is praying 5 times a day and fasting Ramadan. And also whatever is said to be haram, avoid. So you don't do anything that is forbidden, and do what is halal as much as you can, as instructed by Rasulullah. Something that is good, you would do. You can't take in all the halals, of course, but you acknowledge it's halal and you do it. So we then go on to degrees of worship and the believers striving towards the greatest degree of perfection. We are aware that that is minimum, but there is more to it than the minimum, where Rasulullah has informed us that the various sunnahs, for example, the salat prayer itself, it is said that whoever pray 12 sunnah prayers, Allah will build for him a palace in Jannah. And these are called the 12 mu'aqqat. Mu'aqqat means much, much, much emphasized, right? So as the person says in the hadith, right, whatever, he will not increase. That means he will not do any sunnahs. That's what he's saying to Rasulullah SAW. And Rasulullah says, yes, you will go to Jannah. And here we had a discussion also that he said this not because he doesn't encourage them to do sunnah, but he is giving them the minimum, because sometimes when you are new, right, it's important that you learn how to do things which are not, I mean, you just go on for the wajibs first, right, as mentioned, and not to and to avoid any form of sin. All right, so we discussed about the various sunnah acts, and so believers, they want to achieve degrees of perfection, right? Greatest degree of perfection. There are degrees of worship. There are things which are good. There are, of course, extra things to do, like, for example, reading the Quran every day, maybe completing the Quran once in 10 days or something. These are actions of people that are much bringing them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, so they want to attain degrees of perfection. As we have seen, the Khawaja is a man of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, working hard, right, to gain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He reads the Quran, he does the zikr, he prays lots of prayer. So if you want to do all that, then you will have to cover the sunnahs. And of course, the sunnah fasting is there, the sunnah do lots of sadaqah, right, and all those things. Doing supererogatory deeds takes one closer to Allah and the exalted and perfection, right? So when we do all the extra deeds of actions and the sunnahs, we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah accepts our prayers and our du'as, and we become those special people. A man living his sunnah when a man leaves a sunnah, then it is a man living a sunnah will be advised. All right. It is not encouraged that they live a sunnah. So if he lives, individually, if you live a sunnah, then others, the scholars will advise you against it. But if you still insist that is between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But a group purpose, so you cannot form a group and to declare a sunnah as not not wanting to do any of this, and they can't do that, right? Until they will be punished, until they repent. Muslim does sunnah and leave makruhs to attain Allah's pleasure. Makruhs are things you dislike. So if you really wish to be in the good books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you should leave things which are disliked and perform as much sunnah as possible. They pray tahajjud out of fear and hope, and they give sadaqah. So that is the reality of good Muslims. At night they will wake up and they will pray fear of disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and hope and desire of the mercies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they give sadaqah. All right, declaring, we're going to do that one. Just a recap. Declaring matters lawful and unlawful is legislation. Right? So we have to declare whatever is lawful and unlawful, as according to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is only for Allah the exalted. You now know that the basis of faith is that the believer has firm conviction that the lawful is what Allah has declared lawful, and the unlawful is what He has declared unlawful, regardless of whether he commits the lawful, unlawful, or leaves the lawful. Right. Most importantly for a believer is to know that whatever Allah has made lawful, halal, and it is lawful. They cannot change it to make it unlawful. And whatever Allah has made unlawful, they cannot say it becomes lawful. And there are people nowadays, they are Muslims who feel that the laws in the Quran or the Islamic laws are rather stringent, or maybe not applicable to this modern age. There are laws which are formulated 1,400 years ago. So how can they apply to people of this present age, of the Muslims of this present age? So this is where the problem is, when they start to make something that is lawful become unlawful, and something unlawful become lawful according to their whims and fancies, or according to the so-called logic that they use, right? Considering things like, oh, Allah wants to be fair. Allah is a fair God, right? And so this law of woman getting, men getting 2 parts of inheritance, woman getting 1 part is no more valid anymore, because things have changed. And so, but if we have to trust and believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all-knowing, rules and regulations that are in the Quran cannot be changed at all. It's clear, and there is no way we can change. There are certain rules and regulations where our scholars have differed in, like, for example, where in the Hanafi mazhab, if a man touches his wife with wudu, the wudu will not be invalidated. But in the Shafi'i mazhab, it is invalidated. So differences of opinion, and these differences of opinion are not wrong, because they are different. They refer to various hadiths and various texts, and they have certain understandings of these hadiths and texts, right? So it is not unlawful. What is clear, like to say, the Muslims are not allowed to eat the pig because not to eat the pork because it is the reasons given by people why it is not allowed is because the pig is a dirty animal. He eats all kinds of, he's a scavenger, so it's bad for the human body to eat. So people come around now and tell you, oh, but the pig nowadays are very clean. They live in clean places. They are this, they are that. So that law shouldn't be there. So if you try to give reasons for Allah's laws, then others will find ways and means to denounce the reasons that the reason is no more valid. So our stand is that Allah knows best. Allah creates the pig, and Allah has said the pig is haram, whatever the case is, and we take it as haram. So that's why it's haram is haram. We do not make haram become halal. Okay? So that's the reality of our laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So things are definitely haram, right? Like for example, the smoking, smoking was not there during the Prophet's time. So of course they have to come out, look at various situations and consider various other situations and decide whether it is haram or not haram. So initially, most scholars consider it as makruh because of the smell. They refer to the hadith from Rasulullah SAW, and this is one of the hadiths that they have referred to, that Rasulullah SAW disliked people who eat onions because onions has a strong smell, and the onions and the garlic. But these people, they eat raw onions and garlic and not the cooked ones. So the raw ones are very strong, the smell, and it disturbs others. So as long as it disturbs others, it is disliked by the Prophet ﷺ. But the meaning of the makruh, dislike, means something which should not be done because Rasulullah doesn't like it. If you are a person of closeness to Rasulullah ﷺ, you would want to do anything that is disliked by Rasulullah ﷺ. But then through the years, as more knowledge of the smoking surfaced, right, that it is actually harmful. Not only is it smelly, but it is harmful not only to the smoker but to the people around. So it is made haram already. Now, not many are able to accept this ruling because it is not definitive in the sense that it's not like wine in the Quran is haram, pig, pork in the Quran is haram, right? But nobody says in the Quran that smoking is haram. So, but those people who are scrupulous people, I call them scrupulous people, that means they are wara'. Wara' means they desire to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Makruh means out of the question, right? They'll never do anything that's makruh unless they are forced to, right? And then they would do it because it's disliked. Why would I want to do anything that's disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So, and then they make it haram now. So they would not want to argue against it. If it's haram, then it's haram. No big deal. The person claims that he is able to declare unlawful what Allah's legislation has declared lawful, or declared lawful what has been established as unlawful, is being insolent regarding Allah's right, for he alone has the authority to legislate, to declare matters lawful and unlawful. So no one has the right to say what is lawful is now unlawful, and what is unlawful becomes lawful. Right? That is some people are, as I've given examples of those people who declare lawful things as unlawful and unlawful things as lawful. For example, right? So we see an example here. Whoever believes that he can legislate in violation of what Allah has legislated and what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has elucidated, or legislates according to his whims and desires that adhering to the principles of Islamic legislation, has exited Islam. Right? People nowadays make rules and regulations just by Googling, right? Google here, I got this hadith says this, and he makes a ruling on that hadith. It's dangerous. Very dangerous thing to do because as we are aware, our imams, they are memorizers of hadith. They are memorizers of Quran. They were four imams. I'm talking about the four imams. They were scholars of knowledge, right? They knew Arabic, definitely, right? And they don't go by translations. And not in that, they've got like, for example, Imam Hanafi. Imam Hanafi is the oldest, right? That means the oldest in the sense that he was the first of the imams. He met the Sahabas. So he is a tabi'in. The other imams did not meet any Sahabas. and they were tabi'in. That means they met the tabi'in, they didn't meet the sahabas. So those who meet the sahabas are called tabi'in, those who meet the tabi'in are called tabi'in. Tabi'in means followers. All right, so he himself, whenever a situation occurs, as we are aware, we've gone through the history of the various situations in the Islamic Empire and things like that. We are aware that when the Muslims conquered land, right, they are presented with various situations which were not present during the time of Prophet ﷺ, because they have different cultures, different ways of doing things, right, different food that they eat and things like that. So the Imam of Hanafi realized that there is a need to compile the various rulings. So when situations occur, he would gather his students, which numbered about 1,000, and present the situation. And they would come around and give all the various hadiths which they feel has a connection with this particular situation. Right? Then they would discuss about it and they would come to a conclusion on the ruling pertaining to that particular case. Right? So it's not an easy thing. It's not just taking one hadith off the Google and making a ruling on it. We should not do that. And that's arrogance, right? And also chances of us being out of Islam is quite high. So best not to do that. Allah, they exalt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his messenger Rasulullah are free of him. That means they've got nothing to do with him. The one who changes the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tahrimu tayyibati ma ahallallahu lakum wa la ta'tadu innallaha la yuhibbul mu'tadin. O you who believe, do not make haram the good, whatever Allah has made halal for you, and don't exceed limits. Surely Allah does not love those who exceed limits and overstep limits. Limits means Allah has given limits, the boundaries of Islam, boundaries of what can do and what cannot do. There's a hudud. The hudud means that had limits, right? That are ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we should not make anything lawful, do not make unlawful the good things Allah has made lawful for you. Like for example, you say, oh honey, I don't like honey, I'm going to haram the honey for myself. Cannot. Honey cannot be haram. You don't want that's up to you, but don't make it haram. That's what it is. Marriage, I'm going to make haram for myself to get married. No, you have no right to do that, because marriage is a sunnah of the Prophet. You cannot make it haram. You don't want to do, it's up to you, but don't make it haram. That's what it is. Right? It has been established that this verse came down concerning some companions who wanted to deny themselves certain good things out of asceticism and abstinence. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said to them, but I pray and I sleep. So some people say, don't want to sleep. They want to ibadah the whole night. That means they are making sleep as if they are making sleep haram for themselves. Rasulullah tells them, I pray and I sleep. I fast and they do not fast, and they want to fast all the time. Like, and I marry women. So some people, they don't want to have wives because they want to just dedicate themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a sunnah of Rasulullah. You want to follow, he is the one whom we follow, he is our example. So he says all this. Whoever turns away from my sunnah is not from me. So there's a serious thing, right, to be said that you are not from Rasulullah by turning away from the sunnah of Rasulullah. Related by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Breaking one's oath and keeping it. Why are we talking about oath here? So we can see here that the scholars look at the hadith, right, and they extract many rulings or many situations, or they discuss about certain things, right, that might be with the hadith. For example, in this particular hadith, the man said that he actually vowed that he would not do more than that. That means he will just pray 5 times a day. He's going to fast and he will make sure what is halal is halal, what is haram is haram. No more than that, he says, I will not do. So he has sort of made an oath that he will not do more than that. Right. So that's why the scholar here comes around and talk about the oaths. So if someone vows to do something good or that which contains obedience, it is better for him to keep his oath and is do what he has vowed to do. So something good, then you got to keep by it. Allah the Exalted has said, keep your oaths in Surah Al-Ma'idah. In other words, keep them and do not break them. So these are the oaths which are good. Oaths which are, so there are a few rulings on oaths. All right. And someone vows to leave an obligation or commit some disobedience, he is obligated to break his oath. That means he actually says, I'm not gonna talk to my brother forever until he died, until I die. That is, of course, an act of disobedience, because we Muslims must foster good relations, right? That you should break that oath, right, and not do what he has vowed to do. For example, we have the story of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when his cousin, poor cousin, whom he used to give money to every month, to support every month. And this cousin, this very cousin, actually slandered Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha, right? And he was so upset with his cousin that he vowed that he will not support the cousin at all. Then a verse came down to remind him to forgive the cousin, right, if he wants Allah to forgive him. And he decided that he was told to go against his vow. Abu Dawud and others have related that Rasulullah said, whoever vows to commit disobedience has no oath. So it's not considered an oath, because it is an oath of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone vows to leave something good that is not obligatory upon him, it is preferable for him to break it, because that is better for him. Right? So you vow to leave something good that is not obligatory. That means you don't want to do a good thing, but it's not wajib, right? You don't want, but it's preferable for him to break it, because that is better for him. So you should break the vow, because it is better for you to break the vow, because you don't want to do something which is good for you. You should be doing good things and not. Like, for example, he said, I'm not going to do any more than that. Right? That means he's saying that he's not going to do a sunnah, but the sunnah is good for him, so he can break that vow actually and do the sunnah. If someone makes a vows and sees something superior to it, let him do that which is superior, and his vow will be expiated. That means he made a promise, right? To, as mentioned, this one, he made a vow he will never do a sunnah, but along the way, as he become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he realized that it's good to do all the sunnahs. The Prophet was practicing the sunnah, and if the Prophet was practicing, he wants to do more of it. Like, for example, praying duha is a sunnah. It's a good sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ do not miss out on 3: the sunnah before subuh, the sunnah of duha, and the sunnah of witir, right? So when you realize that, you realize that your vow causes you not to do something which is good, then your vow is expired. All right. The hadith advises that the Muslims ask the people of knowledge about Islam's legislation, what is obligatory upon him and what is lawful for him, and what is unlawful for him if he does not. So here we can see that the man approaches Rasulullah. So all of us, layperson who doesn't know rulings, should approach people of knowledge. This is so that he can be upon guidance in his daily affairs, and his soul can be at ease considering the soundness of his action, right? So that he is guided in whatever he does, and also his soul is feel good about doing things which are right. A teacher make the learner comfortable, give him good news, and treat him with ease in a way that makes him want to learn. So that is also from the Rasulullah SAW. He allows this man to keep to what he wants to say. Yes, you'll go to Jannah, right? So that he will continue doing that, and he prays 5 times a day, he fasts, and he does all the good things, right? So that is making it easy for him. We went through that, and so that it encourages him to learn more. So when he learns more, he himself would want to do more than what he vowed to do. All right. We'll take a break here, and we'll continue in 10 minutes time. Let's continue on with our lesson.
Maybe their position decreases, but not their akhlaq. دامت فضائلهم. He says, why? He says, وَالْأَصْلُ غَلَّابُ. He says, because their asl, their origin is overpowering. Their nature is overpowering. You see that in Sayyidina Yaqub teaching it to Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. Well, there's a story, I'll tell you the story, I may have told you that before. Allegedly, allegedly. When at the beginning of Islam going to Morocco, in Western Northern Africa, the Berber tribes, right? Those are the people who lived there. Those are the tribes who used to be there. Tariq bin Ziyad, for example, the one who led the expedition to Andalus, was a Berber, was not an Arab. That's why there's a big famous khutbah allegedly that he said, and probably he never said it. Yeah. But anyway, the man did not probably speak Arabic. And if he did, very little. Allahu Alam. Anyway, But the man was Berber from the North African tribes who embraced Islam and carried the da'wah of Islam, right? So allegedly, those people, they ruled these areas in North and West Africa. And when the prophetic family, yani the offspring of the prophetic family, they were seeking refuge away from the persecution of the Umayyads and the Abbasids, right? They left all the way from Mecca, Medina, in Iraq, and that area. They went all the way across to Morocco today. Mawlay Idris al-Azhar, طبعا his father, Mawlay Idris al-Akbar, right? The fifth grandchild of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yani in the layers. And not him necessarily, but maybe others of the offspring. Allegedly, one of the king of the tribes of the Berber people there in northern Western Africa, he wanted to marry his only daughter. He doesn't have any children, and someone has to be the heir. He wanted to marry his only daughter to one of the people who came to Morocco from the offspring of the prophetic family, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So and whoever marries his daughter will become the king of the place, basically. So basically, he's finding succession in not his own lineage, but actually in someone who marries his daughter and becomes the king. So he went and asked one of the Sharifans, one of the people who belonged to the prophetic family, and asked him. He told them, "Look, I have a daughter. I want to marry her, and I'm the king, etc. You have 3 children. Find me one. I accept." That's how it used to be in the old days. At least there used to be marriage in the old days. Today, because today the institution of marriage is under attack and threat. It's presented as it's no longer needed. It's presented that you don't need to actually form a family. You by yourself is the whole world. Why family and community? You are everything. They'll come to you and eventually tell you, you are God too. Whatever you feel is the haqq. Whatever you feel wrong is the batil. وَلَيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ. Allah says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Their whims become their God. Whatever they feel, that's God to them. فَأَنْتَ تَكُونُ عَلَيْهِ وَكِيلًا. You think you're going to be wakil over them? أَمْ تَحْسَبُ أَنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ يَسْمَعُونَ أَوْ يَعْقِلُونَ. Or do you think they even listen to you, Ya Rasulullah, or they hear? إِنْهُمْ إِلَّا كَالْأَنْعَامِ لَهُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. Anyway, so this man from this king who told this man from the prophetic offspring, he says, "Find me one of your 3 children to marry my daughter." This man went to the oldest one alone. He says, "Come." Who's going to be entrusted to be the king of the lands eventually? He says, "Look, if someone does good to you, what do you do?" He says, "I do good." He says, "If someone does bad to you, what do you do?" He says, "Father, an eye for an eye." In the Quran. He slaps me here, I slap him here. I don't slap him here, not twice, only once. An eye for an eye. He says, "Okay." He calls the other one. He says, "If someone does bad to you, what do you do?" The second son, he says, "Someone bad to me, do I do the same?" He says, "I forgive." Allah. He says, "I forgive." "You forgive?" He says, "I forgive. You taught us." He says, "Okay." He calls the third. He says, "Son, if someone does wrong to you, what do you do?" He says, "Father, if they do wrong to me, I do them good." I says, "Ajib. How come?" He says, "My nature overcomes his nature. My akhlaq overcomes his akhlaq, My asl, my origin overcomes his origin. Otherwise, I would be dictated by him of who I am. I am who I am." He says, "You are the one." Good character doesn't change in good times and bad times. You see that for Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam as well. For Yaqub, where he says, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ. The situation is very difficult. لكن you see, وحديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, حديث البخاري مسلم عن أنس بن مالك. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم comes and he sees a woman عند قبر تبكي. امرأة تبكي عند قبر. She's standing next to a grave or sitting next to a grave and she's crying. فالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم is passing by her, says, اتقي الله واصبري. have taqwa of Allah. Yani maybe she's crying and wailing, and you know how it is sometimes. He says, have taqwa of Allah and have patience. She said, ilayka anni, leave me alone. She tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, leave me alone. You know. فقيل لها, people came to her, they told her, هذا النبي, this is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. So she came then to him. She says, I did not know, ما عرفتك, I did not know it was you. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells her, إنما الصبر عند الصدمة الأولى. The virtue comes at the first response, the first reaction. The first action should not be a reaction. Good characters are in good and bad times. The other thing before we finish also, not just good characters are the same, good people are the same. Whether in good times or in bad times, they're good. Yani, what does that mean? The generous person is generous whether he's poor or he's rich. It makes no difference. And the miser is miser whether he's poor or he's rich. The one who at-tayyib, the pure, the good, is good whether he has or he doesn't have. Wal-khabith, and the crooked, the wicked, even if he has or not, he's wicked. The truthful is truthful whether he is in need or he benefits from that or he doesn't benefit. And the liar will lie when the truth sounds better. Where do I get that from Surah Yusuf? Look, two situations real quick. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam in prison. And remember the two jailmates that were with him? Right? And they saw the dream. Right? They saw the dream, they tell him, and they tell him what the dream is. And what do they tell him? قَالَ نَبِّنَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ. At the end of the verse, they tell Sayyidina Yusuf, the two prison jails. Now Yusuf was in prison, accused wrongly. He has nothing. In prison. What else do you want? They tell him what? نَبِّئْنَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ إِنَّا نَرَاكَ مِنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Tell us what this means. We see you amongst the muhsinin, good people. You are a good muhsin, you are a good person. Right? When he doesn't have anything. Fast forward. His brothers, they go to him before they knew it was him. What do they tell him? قالوا يا أيها العزيز. Now they still think he's the chief minister of Egypt and he's not their brother. يا أيها العزيز. Inna lahu aban shaykhan kabira. If you hold on to our younger brother, he's got an old man who's his father. فَخُذْ أَحَدَنَا مَكَانَهُ. Switch him with one of us. Inna naraka min al-muhsinin. We see you are a good person. When Yusuf alayhi salam did not have anything and was in the deep depths of jail, they called him a good person. When Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was the Aziz of Egypt, he was a good person. A good person is a good person. So before you teach your children many things, teach them to be good people. Just a good person. Well, that's part of Islam. What's the point if then we teach them how to pray and the technicalities of fiqh, and they have no fiqh and no mind and no brain and no heart? Doesn't help. Good people are good people in good times and bad times. Look from Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. Look at good characters. You build the good characters, they'll remain. There is no need for negativity and evil saying, even in the face of calamity with Yaqub alayhi salatu wassalam. These are some adwaq, some dhuq you find in the surah of Yusuf. Some shawq and some mahabba, but some taste, some refinement. We need to look at. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إرغاما لمن جحد به وكفر. أشهد أن سيدنا محمدا صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم الشفيع المشفع في المحشر. صلى اللهم عليه وعلى آله أهل الفقه والنظر والعلم والأثر وعلى من بآثاره مقتفى واهتدى واعتبر. عباد الله اتقوا الله العظيم حق تقواه. راقبوه مراقبة من يعلم ويعتقد بأنه يراه. تزودوا من دنياكم لآخرتكم عملا يحبه ويرضاه. اعلموا أنه لا يضر وينفع ويعطي ويمنع ويصل ويقطع ويخفض ويرفع إلا الله. واعلموا أن الله تعالى أمركم بأمر بدأ فيه بنفسه وثنى بملائكة قدسه. قال تعالى: ولم يزل قائلا عليما: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم. بارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين، أعلي يا مولانا كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم من أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين خيرا فوفقه إليه، من أراد بهم غير ذلك فاهده يا ربنا سواء السبيل. آت أنفسنا تقواها زكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اشف اللهم مرضانا، عاف مبتلانا، فك أسرانا، ارحم موتانا، اغفر اللهم لنا ولوالدينا ومشايخنا ومن له حق علينا.
Amin, 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 ya Rabbal Alamin. This is doa for the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We continue on with Surah Fussilat. Right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. We did verses 30 to 32 in the last lesson. Those who say Allah is Rabb and remain upright, angels descend upon them saying, fear not, nor be grieved, and receive good news of the promised guidance. So here we went through, we explained that the meaning of this state of effect, a state condition of a person who declares Allah is his Rabb, that he is the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he stays on the path of being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angels will descend on them and will say to them, fear not. And we explain the meaning of fear not, nor be grieved, right? Don't have any fears because you have Allah with you. You don't be grieving because you believe in the predestination and things like that. Or the other explanation of fear not is the future, right? When you are going to die. Grief means the grief, fear of what's going to happen to them because of what the things that they do, or grief of the leaving behind their family members, or fear, of what's happening to them. And receive good news. And the angels will come and bring them the good news of the garden. The garden. Some have said that those people have been given flowers from Jannah at the time of death. The angels will say that they were their guardians in the world and the next. So the angels were there looking after them in this world. And the next world, they will also be kept by the angels. They shall have whatever they desire and whatever they ask for. So that is the reward of those people who stick to the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and acknowledge themselves as slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is provision from the forgiving, the merciful. Allah is all forgiving. Allah will forgive us for our faults, and out of this mercy, inshallah, we will be admitted into Jannah. All right, we continue. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا, and who is better in speech than the one he called da'a ilallahi wa amila salihan. He called to Allah and he does good deeds, amalan salih. Wa qala, and he said, innani, surely I, minal muslimin, of those who submit. So the question is, and who speaks better than he who calls to Allah while he himself does good? So he does amal salih, he calls to Allah, and he says he is of those who submit. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَخَلَ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Who is better? Who is better? Who is than the one who says, who calls to Allah? The Prophet ﷺ is being told that if these people are not listening to him, and in their frenzy of enmity has gone as far as asking people to not listen to the Quran and create a noise and uproar when it is recited, and there is no need to go after them. So this is training of the Prophet ﷺ. right? A lot of we saw that they were making lots of noise. They were discouraging people from listening to the Quran, and Allah puts them in hell, and you know, and we got the good ones. It has become evident that all the faults lies with them. So it is not Rasulullah's fault that they behave in that manner, right? So we look at the ones that are good. Prophet ﷺ or his message is not at fault. The message of the Prophet ﷺ is that of Tawheed of Allah and to enslave to him, right? To enslave him, to enslave to him. And there's a message is to be a slave of Allah. We are slave of Allah. Allah is our Rabb. We're going to obey Allah no matter what it takes. So that is the message of Rasulullah SAW. Definitely there's no better word than this. So there is no better word than calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Allah, referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in whatever states you are in. Wa'amila salihan, and do righteous deed, right? Do wa'amila. Wa'amila is do. This is righteous deed, is describing the deed. The deed is always not mentioned. As it's understood, when you do a deed, right? But what is the deed? The description of a deed is that it must be salihan. Besides this message, the Rasulullah SAW himself is also an embodiment of righteousness and also calling others towards it. We see Rasulullah SAW as one with great character, great manners, and also he himself adhered to all the instructions of the Quran and the instruction that he gives others. And he does not violate any of the instructions. This is an irrefutable testimony of his genuineness and of the fact that he is not one who wants to create disorder in the land. So this one proves that he is true. He does not have any agenda. They have tried to seduce him with money, seduce him with power, seduce him with women. It didn't work because that was not, you see, that's not his intention. He doesn't intend to be powerful or whatever. He just wants to pass the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's not there to create disorder. His words and deeds are in perfect harmony with one another, and that he wants to engender virtue and justice in the land. So his words, whatever he say, is in according to what he does. And whatever he says does not contradict whatever he has said. So, and his only aim is to ensure people are virtuous and just in the land. وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. So these people, right, they did amal salih, that means deeds which are taught by Rasulullah SAW, that improve their state on earth, improve the state of others also. As they do good, they embody this goodness in them. Everybody sees good and everybody will follow suit. You don't have to instruct people. When you do amal salih, you do it for yourself, right? You do it, and then of course amal salih doesn't mean just for yourself like praying and fasting, but you give sadaqah, you are kind to the poor, but you don't make an attempt to change them, right, by advising them, by instructing them, but your action on them, right, allows these people to become better. That's Rasulullah SAW. He prays tahajjud, he fasts, he gives money to the poor, he sadaqah to the poor, he helps the poor, he cares for the poor. So when you do this to others, the others will see good in you, and they realize the importance of being good, and they will also want to be good. And they say, and these people, they call to Allah, they do good deeds, and they do the righteous deeds. Righteous is very important, not good only. Must be righteous. It corrects, it changes their perspective in life. And they move on to doing things which benefit themselves and others. And they say, innani. Innani is an emphasis. Actually, inni. But it says, innani, very, very surely I am of those who submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is evident from these words that he is not after establishing his political dominance over people. In fact, he wants to make everyone obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's about submitting to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This Islam is the nature of this universe, and it is as a religion towards which people were called by Ibrahim alayhi salam, the person whom these Ishmaelites associate themselves to. So if even after these clear testimonies, these people are adamant and opposing him, then he should consign their matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So leave them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has done his best, he has done what is right, he has shown good examples in the way he lives, and everything is good. right? But if they don't want to follow that, that is their choice. None except Allah can lift the covers and have enveloped their hearts. The hearts are covered, they cannot see clearly. All right. Propagation of religion is the best of words, and divine messengers are the best of speakers. The verse praises those who act in three ways. They call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide them and show unto them the path to happiness and divine guidance, and show them the straight path of divine laws. These words and deeds are the best. They do righteous deeds, good deeds, thus that their words have a profound effect on the audience. So the actions are important, because words only doesn't mean much if there is no action. They totally submitted to divine commands, and they are their audience to submit, and they call their audience to submit to divine will and truly believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the reality of the true believers. Wala tastawil hasanatu wala sayyi'ah, and not is similar the good and not the evil. Idfa billati hiya ahsan, repel with that it is better, that it is better. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ, then behold, whom between you and between him enmity, كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ, as if he is an intimate friend. كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ, as if he is an intimate friend. وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. And not alike are the good and the evil, repel with what is best. When lo, he between whom and you was enmity, would be as if he were a warm friend. All right. Wala tastawi. So Allah then talks about good and evil. It's not the same, right? There's no way the good is the same as the evil. Good is good, evil is evil. You cannot be good, right? Good people do not become evil. Usually evil people find it difficult to become good. But this is about thinking. Once you keep in view the conditions in which Rasulullah SAW, and his Sahabas, and through him his followers, were given this instruction. So let's look at the condition in Mecca. They are still in Mecca towards the last 2 years of Mecca, where they are being abused and being tortured, and being denounced and being exiled, and being thrown and things like that. The conditions were that the invitation to the truth was being resisted and opposed with extreme stubbornness and severe antagonism, in which all bounds of morality, humanity, and decency were being transferred. They don't care, right? As Rasulullah has gone through also a lot, where they throw intestines of the camel on his head, right? Of course, Bilal being tortured, being put a stone on his body, right? Until they want him to renounce his beliefs. All the Sahabas are being beaten up, being tortured, being and this is just after Rasulullah's clan was being boycotted, no food, no drink. So they just do not care. They do all kinds of evil things on Rasulullah SAW and the converts and the Muslims following Rasulullah SAW. Every sort of lie was being uttered against the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. Every kind of evil device was being employed to defame him and to create suspicions against him in the minds of the people. So they did a lot. As we are aware, this is Mecca. Mecca is a place of pilgrimage for the Arabs. Right? Even before Islam, they followed the ways of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, and they come to do the pilgrimage on the supposedly 10th of Zulhijjah, but it's not. They change it on. We mentioned about them changing dates and everything, just to suit their agenda and to make things easy for them in their travels and things like that. So supposedly 10th Zulhijjah they would do their 9th Zulhijjah they would do their wukuf. They still did their wukuf because that is part of the teachings of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, which they follow. Some they follow, some they don't want to follow. So people from all over Arabia comes down to Mecca, and they hear of Rasulullah SAW. So the Quraysh, the Kafir Quraysh, need to find ways and means to prevent these people from embracing Islam. What happens is that the number of Muslims in Mecca were not increasing, but the Muslims outside Mecca was increasing due to the pilgrimage and the pilgrims bringing back Islam to their various tribes. So every kind of accusation was being leveled against him, and a host of the propagandists were busy creating doubts against him in the hearts. So they were doing their best to find ways and means to denounce Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? To defame him, to put him in a very bad light, so that none would want to follow him. In short, he and his companions were being persecuted in every possible way, because of which a substantial number of the Muslims had been compelled to immigrate from the country. So we have people going away, right? Some going to Habsha or Ethiopia, and some going to Medina, and some other places, so that they are to get away from that abuse, persecution. And the program that had been prepared to stop him from preaching was that a hand of mischievous people was set behind him, who would raise such a hue and cry that no one could be able to hear anything as soon as he opened his mouth to preach his message. And that was what Allah has highlighted in this surah, how they make lots of noise to prevent others from listening to the message of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In such discouraging conditions, when every way of extending invitation to Islam seemed to be blocked, Rasulullah was taught this recipe for breaking the opposition. What was it? He's been told that the good is better than the bad. And first it was said that goodness and evil are not equal, as if to say, although apparently our opponents might have raised a dreadful storm of mischief and evil, as against which goodness might seem absolutely helpless and powerless, yet evil in itself is a weakness which ultimately causes its own destruction. Right? So that is what it means, right? Allah is encouraging people, you all are on the good path, on the right path. Evil path is not the path of yours, right? So do understand that you are better than those evil ones. Although, as mentioned, at this point in time, the good seems to be helpless and powerless, and evil seems to be powerful and getting the better of the good, but evil in itself will destroy itself. For as long as man is man, his nature cannot help hating evil. Not only the companions of evil, even its own upholders know in their hearts that they are liars and wicked people and are being stubborn for selfish motives. These evil people who does evil things, right? They should know that they know themselves that they are evil. They have a conscience in themselves, and eventually it will eat them up. It will destroy them. Not to speak of creating dignity and honor for them in the hearts of others, it lowers them in their own self-esteem and in their own esteem, and causes their morale to be weakened and destroyed in the event of every conflict. And that is the reality of evil. And they themselves, actually, they try to put up a front. The people who are angry are actually cowards, because they don't know how to manage the situation, and they just shout and scream, and just to get out of the state of, or to threaten people with their shouts and their screams. But actually, they are weak people because they are not able to manage the situation in the best of ways, in a goodly manner. They are unable to, because they are weak. They don't know how to move about being good at all. As against this evil, the good, which appears to be utterly helpless and powerless, goes on operating and working, and it becomes dominant in the long run. So if we persist on our good, continue with good, having faith in good, eventually you would triumph. For in the first place, the good has a power of its own, which wins the hearts, and no man, however perverted and corrupted, can help esteeming it in his own heart. Evil people, when you do good to them, they actually feel it, because they do not have that good thing in them. And it takes time, right, to continue doing the good on them. And eventually the good comes back to you, and the evil person would realize of the good of the people. And we've seen that with Rasulullah, some stories with Rasulullah on how he treated bad people with his good manners, and they felt remorseful, and they turned to good. Then when the good and evil are engaged in a face-to-face conflict and their nature and merits become apparent and known after a long drawn-out struggle, not many people would be left who would not start hating the evil and admiring the good. So you see good and evil. People will see the good and they will admire the good and they will hate the evil. No matter how great the evil is. Idfa' billati ahsan, right? Repel with that which is best. There's an instruction, right? Things are so bad with the Muslims, and Allah instruct them to repel evil with what is best, not only good, but what is best. Second, it was said that evil should be resisted not by the mere good, but by a superior good. As if to say, if a person treats you unjustly and you forgive him, it is the mere good. Superior good is that you treat the one who ill treats you with kindness and love, not just forgiving, but with kindness and love. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Then you will see, right, definitely the one between you and him is enmity, and surely, right, like as if that it is a friend, a very close friend, warm-hearted friend. The result would be that your worst enemy would become your closest friend, but that is human nature. You continue doing good to people, you do kindness to people, you give them presents. I mean, like for example, you have the story of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his neighbor, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every time Rasulullah walks past the house, the neighbor would throw all kinds of dirty things on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would just move past. He didn't react, you know. But then one day, while he was walking past the house, nothing happened. Nobody threw any bad thing, dirty things at him. So he wondered what happened to the woman who throws dirty things on him. So he went to ask his friend, his neighbor, where is that woman who threw dirty things at him? So the people said, oh, she's sick. So Rasulullah bought some presents and went to visit her and give her the presents. And that is not only forgiving, but also doing extra good. And she cried when she saw him being good to her because she has been so bad to him all this while. And then she changed her position towards him. And he loves being good to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we see that many stories of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you remain quiet and respond to an abuse, it will be mere goodness, but it will not silence the abuser. But if you express good wishes for him in response to his abuses, even the most shameless opponent will feel ashamed and then would hardly ever be able to employ invectives against him. So this is the advice that people do evil to you. You don't only forgive them, but you actually take a further step of giving them good things. You respond, you dua for them. Right, you see this so many in we have gone through many of the stories of these people with Sayyidina Hassan, with various awliya. People do evil to them. They actually practice what the Quran asked them to do. If a person doesn't miss any opportunity to harm you and you go on tolerating his excesses, it may well make him even bolder in his mischiefs. So you got to not just allow them to be evil to you, but if a person doesn't miss any opportunity to harm you and you go on tolerating his excesses, it may well make him even bolder in his mischief. So here is explaining that you just keep quiet only. No, you take a further step to be good to him, and that will change him. That's what Allah is telling us. But if on an occasion he gets into trouble and you come to his rescue, he will fall down at your feet, for no mischief can hold out against good. So that's what it is. Right? He's been so bad to you, but you, when he needs you, you are there for him to help him. You are kind to him. You are good to him, and that will make him realize how bad he is. However, it will be wrong to take this general principle in the meaning that every enemy will necessarily become a close friend when you have treated him with a superior good. So, not all the time, so saying that there are times, but not all the time people who are bad will actually become good. So you got to go on being patient, right, with these bad people, and eventually they will. Well, even if they don't change, so you have done your part as being a good person. There are such wicked person in the world whose inimical nature will never change for the better, no matter how tolerantly you may overlook their excesses and how benevolently you may react and respond to every evil committed by them. So we should not assume the reality of the human being is that not all of them, when you do extra good to them, they will actually be good to you. Some people can still continue being evil. So you must be aware of that. You must understand the reality of the human being, and so you should not. You should do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should do it because Allah has instructed you to do it. The possibility of them being good to you is there, but not all the time. But such devil incarnates are as few in the world as the embodiments of goodness are. So these evil people, right? If they are devils in themselves, right? They don't have that many of them around. And also people who will do extra good, also not many of them around. All right. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. And not receives it except those who are patient. They were patient. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. And not receives it except possessor of great fortune. So, and none are made to receive it but those who are patient, and none are made to receive it but those who have a mighty good fortune. So Allah is saying not everybody is going to be able to do it. Ma is not ever. Ma is a strong no. Yulaqqaha, that means attain it, right? Receive it, except those who are patient. So only when you are patient, you are able to hold yourself, right? And not react adversely. And just like we heard the khutbah of Muhammad Ninawi. So his name was Muhammad Ninawi in the video, right? He mentioned about Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam, when his son came back and said that the wolf has eaten Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, and he knew that it was not true because first of all, the blood was not true. The second, the shirt was not torn, and also he knew that Nabi Yusuf has a dream, which means he is still alive and he would one day be a great prophet. So he knew his son was lying to him. He didn't confront the son and sons and say, "You are all liars. You all did." He didn't. He just, because he knew that the more he said that, the more the son will continue lying, and So what he says was a very simple. Oh, you make things very easy for yourself. That's what. So the son, if they have conscience, they realize that they have done something which is bad. And he just says, Sabrun Jamil, right? That means he is going to be patient. So this patient is beautiful patience. And he's going to Sabrun Jamil. And he says that he will seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's how it is. Seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one accepts this advice and works according to it except for those who can be patient in doing so. For it is difficult for people to. They are patient here does not mean they bear with the punishment, with the tortures and everything. They are able to hold themselves well, and they can move in the right direction, right? According to the way Allah wants to. That is called taqwa. So they have taqwa and they do the best. So that's people of patience. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا ذُو حَظٍّ عَظِيمٍ. And not going to receive it except those of great fortune. A possessor of fortune, great fortune. The one who has a great portion of happiness in this world and in the hereafter. That is the fortune of believers, that they have a great portion of happiness because they are able to be happy in this world. They're not easily disturbed by difficult environments, by evil people around them. They are always good to evil. They see people as they are, and they try to understand. They empathize with people, and they remain good in their ways. And they will get happiness in the next world because they do things as instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ali bin Abi Talha reported that Ibn Abbas explained this ayah. Allah commands the believers to be patient when they feel angry, to be forbearing when confronted with ignorance, to forgive when they are mistreated. So this is what it is, a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you are confronted with people who talk nonsense, you must know how to react, how to hold yourself, right? And not to react in manners that will cause you to be denounced or to be seen as not proper. And if they mistreat you, just move on and forgo them. If they do this, Allah will save them from the shaitan and subdue the enemies to them until they become like close friends. Right? That is what it is. The enemies will slowly be subdued. وَإِمَّا يَنْزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ, and if incites you from shaitan and incitement, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ, then seek protection in Allah. إِنَّهُ, surely he, huwa he, sami'un, all hearing, all knowing, all knowing. All right. وَإِمَّا يَنْزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ. Right, that means, you know, shaitan will always be there waiting to tell you not to listen and not to be good. This person has done this to you. How can you be good to him? Oh, attack him, scold him, get angry with him. That's shaitan. So this is an incitement from shaitan because he doesn't want you to do good things. He doesn't want you to be patient, to hold yourself, to do things according to what Allah wants you to do. So Satan feels grief when he sees that in the conflict between the truth and falsehood, meanness is being resisted with nobility and evil with goodness. He wants that he should somehow incite the fighters for the sake of the truth and their prominent men in particular, and especially their leaders to commit such a mistake, even if once, on the basis of which he may tell the common people that evil is not being committed by one side only. If mean acts are being committed by one side, the people of the other side are not morally any better. They too have committed such and such a shameless act. Right? Mean acts are being committed by one side. The people of the other side are also not morally any better. So they instigate you. Oh, you see, they are doing bad. They are not good. You also can do all the bad things. It's okay. Right? So this is the incitement from the shaitan. The common people do not have the capability that they may assess and counterbalance fairly the excesses being committed by one party by the reactions of the other. As long as they see while the opponents are adopting every mean act, yet these people do not swerve at all from the path of decency and nobility, goodness and righteousness. They continue to regard and esteem them highly. So the fight is there. The shaitan is going to instigate you and prevent you from being good, from doing things which are good. But if at some time they can happen to commit an unworthy act, even if it is a retaliation against a grave injustice, both the sides become equal in their esteem, and the opponents also get an excuse to counter one blamable act with 1,000 abuses. So if you react in the way the evil ones react, then you are giving them an excuse to continue being bad. So it is. It is why it has been said, be on your guard against the deceptions of the shaitan. He will incite you as a well-wisher to take note of every abuse and every insult and attack and urge you to pay the opponent in the same coin. Otherwise, you would be regarded as a coward and weaken your image of strength. So that's about it. Weaken. You are a weak person. You are this, you are that. On every such occasion, whenever you feel any undue provocation, you should take care that this is an incitement of shaitan who is arousing you to anger and wants you to commit a mistake. And so that is Allah is telling, if they incite you. The best commentary of this subject is the event which Imam Ahmad had related in his Musnad on the authority of Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. He says that once a man started uttering insults against Abu Bakr in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this man was saying all kinds of bad things to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr kept on hearing the insults quietly, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kept on smiling at him. At last, when Abu Bakr could not restrain himself any longer, he also uttered a harsh word for the person in response. No sooner did he utter the word that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was seized by restraint, which appeared on his face, and he rose and left the place immediately. So Rasulullah was cannot hold himself, right? Rasulullah was not happy, and he went. Abu Bakr also rose and went behind him. On the way, he asked, how is it that as long as the person went on abusing me, you kept quiet and smiling, but when I also said a word in retaliation, you were annoyed? Rasulullah replied, until you were quiet, an angel remained with you, who went on replying to him on your behalf. But when you spoke out, shaitan came in place of the angel. I could not sit with the shaitan. So that was hadith, right? So fasta'idh billah. So when it happens, say a'udhu billah. Seek protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On every occasion, such occasion, whenever you feel any undue provocation, you should take care that this is an incitement of shaitan who is arousing you to anger and wants you to commit a mistake. So and after having been warned, do not be involved in the misunderstanding that you have full control over yourself. And the shaitan cannot make you commit any mistake. So seek protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this high opinion of one's own power of judgment and will is another and more dangerous deception of shaitan. Instead of it, you should seek forgiveness from Allah. So they say, oh, I'm strong, I can fight the shaitan, I'm this, I'm that. No, you need to know that you need help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For a man can save himself from mistakes only if Allah helps and grants him protection. Imam Ali radiallahu anhu taught his companions 400 aphorisms regarding the issues which are the benefit of Muslims in this world and the hereafter. And instead of which is, whenever one is tempted by shaitan, he should seek refuge in Allah and say, I believe in Allah and purify my faith for him. So that is one of the advice of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. Assert your faith in Allah and purify your faith for him so you do not believe in the shaitan. So man's creator knows the keys to each and every heart as well as his abilities and qualities. He knows where and how shaitan can penetrate his mechanizations. Therefore, he protects the advocates of his message from stirred up anger as we face what excites the fury of even the most forbearing of us. So Allah is telling us this is the reality. People do bad to you, you do good to them, right? And you do the best to them, and the shaitan will come and disturb you. Yet this too is a difficult road to follow, requiring that we submit here, as in every situation, to divine directives to the exclusion of others. Innahu huwas samiul alim. Allah reminds us, for surely He hears and He knows. Knowing that, Allah hears and sees us and He knows what's happening, we are assured Allah will be with us. After seeking Allah's refuge against a storm of opposition, the thing that brings patience and peace and tranquility to the heart of the believer is this conviction. Allah is not unaware. He knows whatever we are doing as well as that which is being done against us. He's hearing whatever we and our opponents utter and watches the conduct of both of us. Thus the believer entrusts affairs to Allah and remains satisfied. All right, stop. Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqtani wa ana abduka wa ana ala ahdika wa wa'dika mastata'tu a'udzu bika min syarri ma sana'tu abu'u laka bi ni'matika alayya wa abu'u bi dhanbi faghfir li innahu la yaghfiru dzunuba illa anta. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbana anfa'na bima 'allamtana. Rabbi 'allimna allazi yanfa'una. Rabbi faqihna wa faqih ahlana wa qarabatin lana fi dinina ma'a ahli al-qutri unsa wa zakat. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusr. Ila allazina amanu wa amilus solihat wa tawassaw bil haqq وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله.